All right. This is the first episode of the Music Ministry Podcast, and a big thank you to Jason for being here from the place. Hey, man, I really appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Um, Before we get started, I would like to start off with a prayer. Um, and let me do that, okay? Father God, thank you for everything that you have given us. Thank you for today. Today is your day, and we are coming here so that we can learn about how you have moved in Jason's life and how music played a part of that. And we want your spirit to be with us, and we want it to be in the music and into this fellowship. So we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
So Jason, I was asking you before about your journey that led you to Christ. Did you want to start there about who you were?
Yeah, absolutely. So, let's see. I grew up in a Christian household. My dad was a pastor, so I'm a pastor's kid. I accepted Christ at a pretty early age. I think I was 3 or 4. That's what my parents have told me. I don't really remember it, but they told me that I grabbed my mom's hand and led her in the bedroom and said, I want Jesus in my heart. And my mom prayed the prayer with me. And then I've just grown up in church ever since. And as far as music becoming a part of my life, my mom had like a old record player, and I would listen to all her records. So she had like Larry Norman, she had like Maranatha music, but then she had her workout music, so it was like non-Christian stuff. So it was, funk and disco and things like that I would listen to. And then as I became a teenager, I got really involved, that really found my own musical tastes, and I discovered rap music, and I fell in love with rap. And I discovered
What was the first song that you found in the
rap music. It was Run DMC, and they had a song called Sucker MCs on this compilation album, and I was like, "What is this? This is amazing!" And I fell in love with electronic music within that, and later on discovered like new wave and techno, and I loved like all those genres, like anything to do with electronic beats and big 808 drums. Like I was like, yes, like I really fell in love with that.
That's cool. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Hawaii, so born in Chicago. Dad, when I was 5 years old, felt the call to come to Hawaii and be a missionary. So we moved there. So we're missionaries from like basically the Midwest. And then Dad started a church there a little later on, and I grew up in that church he started that when I was about 11, and till I left at about age 31.
Now, was it on the Big Island, Hawaii?
It's on Oahu, so it's not the big island, but it's the most populated one. It's the one with Honolulu and all that.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And did he go there just being led by the Spirit?
Yeah.
Or-
Yeah, like a full-on, like, God spoke to him, you're supposed to go to Hawaii, and we were in Chicago. It was like the middle of winter, so like everybody thought he was crazy, or they thought he was just trying to get out of the cold. But yeah, like it was God leading him. He hooked up with a street ministry type of organization there. So we were faith-based, like people just supported us from the mainland for several years. And then he started the church in Waikiki, and he ran that for 25 years till he handed it off to his associate.
Wow, that is amazing.
Yeah.
That he did that just being led by the Spirit.
Right, yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That is
huge.
amazing. And so you played a part in that for 25 years?
So, yeah, kind of. Like, I was a pretty typical surly teenager. I didn't care to be involved with church music. I thought church music sucked. And I remember telling my dad that. I remember telling him, like, Dad, the music at church sucks. And he told me, well, if you don't like it, why don't you change it? And I was probably 15 or 16 when he said that, and I just kind of went, eh. And when I was 18 years old, this is the story how I became worship leader, okay? And my dad tricked me into becoming worship leader, and this is how he did it. So I was 18 years old. I graduated high school. I literally got like $200 for graduation, and I thought I was rich. And I thought, I'm going to go buy a guitar. I'm going to learn how to play it. and chicks will dig me. That was literally my, like, this is how I'm going to start getting involved in playing music, right? Chicks are going to think I'm cool. So I get this acoustic, and I'm kind of struggling. You know, there's no YouTube back then. There's no, lessons online or anything like that, right? I'm just trying to figure it out. I got like a chord book, and it's not making sense. And my dad comes into my bedroom, and he goes, hey, I see you trying to learn how to play guitar. Why don't I have the worship leader, who I actually thought was a cool guy, why don't I have the worship leader give you lessons? I'll pay for him. And I was like, my dad never paid for anything. He never had money to pay for anything, right? So I was like, you're going to pay for lessons? He goes, yeah, I'll pay for lessons. So, okay. So he gets me lessons with the worship leader, really neat dude, and he starts teaching me anything I want to learn. So I tell him, I want to learn Lenny Kravitz. I want to learn Soup Dragons. I want to learn the Pixies. I want to learn all this stuff. And he said, great, I'm going to teach you all that, but you also have to learn some worship songs because these are really easy. These will teach you the open chord basics and things like that. I go, okay, fair enough. So I'm practicing away for a few months in my room. I'm learning Lenny Kravitz and stuff, and I'm also learning I Will Celebrate, right? I will celebrate, sing unto the Lord. I will sing to him a new all those like 3-chord wonders, right? Yep. And I remember this vividly. I'm literally 3 months into lessons. I know maybe a handful of worship songs. My dad walks into my room, and I'm practicing, and he says, hey, my 8:30 a.m. worship leader just quit. So you're on this week. And I was like, Dad, first of all, I don't want to be a worship leader. Second of all, I know 4 songs. And he goes, well, it's 3 or 4 more than I know. So you're playing this week. And that's how I became a worship leader.
Wow. That's amazing. I mean, you got thrown right into the mix.
Yes. Right? Yes. No training, no mentoring. Just here you go.
And that's how it works, though.
Yeah.
What I pulled out of that, though, I love that your dad said, if you don't like it, then change it.
Yeah.
Fix it.
Yeah.
Make it right for you.
Yeah.
I think that there's a lot of wisdom in that, if there's something that you think needs to be changed.
Right.
It's our responsibility to change it.
Absolutely.
And make sure that we are following the will of God and that everything is going towards the right direction.
Yeah.
But so then you had how'd the first gig go?
Oh, it was horrible. It was horrible. I was so bad. I'll tell you how bad I was. So I was leading worship at the 8:30. There were real musicians who went to our church, and they would come up and be like, bro, you got to work on this, you got to work on that, and I was just clueless. Everything was just going over my head. And this one day, this is such a rookie move, but I came to worship. I came to Sunday morning, and I had forgotten a pick. I didn't have a pick in my case. And there was not a pick to be had because we met in this basically cafeteria. It was a set up, tear down type thing. So there's no none of our stuff was around. And shit, what am I going to do? And I didn't know at that point, I could just play with my fingers, right? I got to have something in my hand. This is what I'm thinking. So I grabbed this nickel, a literal 5-cent nickel, and I'm playing guitar with this nickel through the whole set, and it sounded so terrible. And there was this guy in Waikiki. There's a lot of transient people, a lot of people just living on the street, involved in all kinds of stuff, and a lot of those people came to our church. So there's one dude who came, and he was literally I believe he's a Vietnam War vet. He had one good leg, so he had this wheelchair, but he had the one with the small wheels, so you can't push it with your hands. You either someone pushes you, or what he would do is he would spin the chair around, and he would kick himself around Waikiki with one good foot. This is how he got around. He had a partial frontal lobotomy, so on his top forehead, there was this huge place where his skull was sunken in, where because they thought he was crazy, they had taken out part of his brain. Okay, now this is the dude. Okay, he hears me play with this nickel. He comes up to me. He pushes himself up to the front with one good foot after the service. And he goes, that sounded horrible. He's like, what happened? And I was like, well, I didn't have a pick, and I had to play with the nickel. And he was like, don't ever do that again. That sucked. And then he got in his little wheelchair, and he scooted out the door with his one good leg. And I was like, man, if the guy with the frontal lobotomy knows it's bad, it must have really been bad. So it was bad. To start with, it was really bad.
So what did you do? What did you do moving forward to?
So yeah. So what happened was my brother one of my younger brothers got involved. He started playing bass. And then thankfully some like older musicians that like had some experience playing in bands and stuff, they for whatever reason, maybe they felt sorry for me or whatever, but they kind of joined our worship team and they started showing me things. You know, hey, you can get an effects pedal and it'll sound way cooler. You know, you can put a little chorus or flange or delay or whatever. And these are some different ways to play chords. And they really kind of helped just mentor me and teach me how to be better. And then my dad, remember, so go back to a few years back, and he was like, change the music if you don't like it, right?
Yeah.
Well, my dad started encouraging us. He said, hey, whatever songs you guys are listening to, just rewrite it with Christian lyrics. You can play it in church. And I was like, that's okay? You know, but funny thing, I didn't know it at the time, but a lot of hymns were actually like bar songs of the time, and they just rewrote the lyrics. So my dad was just copying them, right?
Right. No, now that's a technique. If you look back on one of my favorite composers is J.S. Bach.
Okay.
He was a Lutheran.
Okay.
And his whole body of work was religious music.
Okay.
And what he would do is he would take in his time, he'd take an ancient melody and he would place that as a soprano line and then reharmonize it.
Oh.
He would take a melody and he put it in as a tenor line and he would reharmonize it. He would take it and put it in as a alto line and reharmonize it, or as a bass line. And then he would set religious text to it.
Nice.
So your dad was just following
Yeah.
the same pattern.
And my he's a smart dude. So that got us super we started rewriting songs. Like we were rewriting songs by Sublime, by the Pixies, by the Soup Dragons, like anything we were listening to that we thought, oh, we could just change a few words here and there and it would work. And he let us do it. Even though like I think back now to what we did, and I wouldn't like do that now. I wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. He was just so encouraging. And we started writing our own music, and he encouraged us to play that. Like he loved it when we played songs in church that we had written, and he was just very, very encouraging, and was really kind of my springboard into what I do now.
And so you left the island.
Yeah. So the gig at church was pretty much volunteer, and I was a district's. Well, I was working for a company called Lids. It's a hat stores, and I was like a district sales manager in training. So at this time, I'm like 30, 31. We've got 3 kids. They're probably like, I don't know, 8, 6, and 1 at that point or something. And then my job at the time said, hey, we'll promote you to a full-on district manager, but you got to move. And so that's how we ended up in Phoenix, Arizona.
Okay, for Lids.
Yeah, for Lids.
And then what brought you to the place?
So we moved here in 04 December. We got involved with my dad was a Foursquare church pastor, and we got involved with a Foursquare plant over in Anthem, Arizona, and my wife and I served there for about 10 years. We were like licensed pastors, and I did a bunch of stuff with youth and music. My wife did a bunch of stuff with children's. That ended, and we laid down our licenses. We served there like another year and a half. Not as pastors, just as volunteers. And then we decided, the Lord was telling us it was time to move on. So up until that point, like I had been like volunteer. So I'm a volunteer worship leader for like 20 years at that point. And we started going to this mega church in the valley called CCV. And I started meeting people there and musicians and stuff. And I ended up started to play with them, and they contract all their musicians. So every one of their musicians that you see on stage at their church, like they pay them to play. And I was like, you guys get paid for this? Like, this really happens? Because I was volunteer for 20 years, right? And so I got involved doing that. I met these like incredible musicians that were playing at this level that I'd never played at. But they were like inviting me, like, hey, if you want to play with us, here's what you need to learn. And so I really dug in hard, and I started playing bass for them. And then I started, every once in a while, they would contract me to lead worship at like a youth service or something like that. And then that led me to this other really cool organization. They're called Worship Support Network. So they're based in Phoenix, but they have other cities that they serve, but Phoenix is their home base. And the guy who started it, his name's Elijah. He has a heart to serve churches that are struggling in the area of music. So he takes musicians, worship leaders, singers, and places them in churches that need help. So I, through CCV, started working for WSN, first as a bass player, and then I thought, well, what the heck? I'll send them my worship leader video. And they loved it, and they immediately, I didn't get any more bass gigs, and they started working me as a worship leader every single weekend. So it was weird because my family's attending CCV, and we're going like on Saturday nights, and then Sunday mornings for like a year, I'm going to a different church every single week.
Wow.
And I was just playing at all these different places, and there's a lot of churches in the valley that are really struggling in this area. And I think a lot of it is because there's so many mega churches that contract, they kind of suck up all the musicians. And so it's left, a lot of churches are kind of left with, we don't really have anybody to lead worship, we don't have anybody to play. So I was doing that, and they kept sending me to this little church in Wickenburg, not little, this amazing church in Wickenburg called The Place. And I met Pastor Greg, and I met Tara, and I would go back there like every few weeks. And they really liked me, and I really liked them, and it was just this really neat, like, synergy. Like, I just felt like at home, felt like I was at a church, like, you know, like that my dad would have worked in or would have started, or it just had that whole feel. And so finally, I said like probably 4 or 5 times, and the 5th time I was in the back, and it was like right after prayer time, and Pastor Greg looks at me and he goes, "Would you want to play here every week?" And I was like, you know, I really think I would. So I told WSN, and Elijah was super cool. He basically facilitated me getting hired to be the worship leader, worship pastor at The Place, and that was just about maybe a year and 3 months ago.
Okay, so you've been there for a year and 3 months.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Nice. I mean, that's awesome about going to CCV, and then CCV led you to what was the name of it?
WSN, Worship Support Network, yeah.
Worship Store?
Worship Support Network.
Worship Support Network.
Mm-hmm.
And then you were led to Pastor Greg at The Place.
Dude, it's wild. Like, I never would have ever been like, okay, this is going to be the path. You know what I mean? In fact, like, I was honestly, at the time, before I met Greg and all that, like, I was like, oh, I really would like to play at CCV every week. They have so many musicians, they didn't need me every week. And that's what got me involved with WSN, and then finding Greg and realizing, no, this is where I want to be.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of young musicians out there that are maybe in a similar boat, trying to figure out what to do.
Mm-hmm.
They might feel like they're drowning in the place that they're at, mega church with an abundance of musicians.
Mm-hmm.
With your experience, what advice would you give, not just the musicians, but any Christians that are, you know, putting their faith in God? They might be fearful, you know, the future's uncertain, and we all have to deal with that. And how has Christ played a role in your path?
So
maybe just in since you got to Phoenix up to this point.
Okay, yeah.
You can take it wherever you want. You know,
okay.
But just
for sure.
Suggestions out there.
So definitely, like, it was funny growing up in my dad's church. I never wanted to be a pastor ever. I was like, I don't want to be a pastor. Like, I saw what he went through. He ran it, you know. He was just him, and like he had an associate pastor sometimes, you know, so he was doing all the work. And I saw the way the ministry could just kind of roll you up if you let it, you know what I mean? And so I was like, I don't want to be a pastor. But then we end up in Phoenix, and we end up at this Foursquare church plant, and you know, we got super involved there, and they were just kind of like, hey, we want you to be a pastor just to kind of legitimize what you're doing. That's how they got me to be a pastor. They tricked me there too, just for the record. And but I think like the Lord is going to lead you in places you probably never ever thought you were going to go. And if you were to plan out your life and you said, it's going to be steps 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, chances are it's probably not going to look like that, right? But I think he knows so much more than what we want. He knows exactly how he's made us, what bent he's given us, what gifts he's given us, and for what purpose he's designed us. And I'll be honest, like, as I couldn't have planned out the last 15 years, but I also couldn't be happier about where I'm at and where he's having me serve, if that makes sense.
Oh, totally.
So I had a mentor once. Her name's Jeannie Mayo. She's a pretty big national youth pastor. And I was privileged to, like, for a year, go to Atlanta and sit under her for a few meetings and stuff. And I remember her talking, and she said, basically, what do you burn for? Like, what's your passion? What did God make you to do? And whatever that is, like pursue that with all your heart. You know, whether it's career, whether it's like what you do as a volunteer thing for your church or whatever, like that needs to be where you focus your energy and your time and your talents, because that's what the world needs. World needs people who are passionate about something, right? And it took me a long time. Like, music was a big part of my life, and I've been a worship leader for a long time, but honestly, like, it's only been within the last probably 5 years that I've really realized, like, man, I am just not happy if I am not involved with music at my church, whatever church that is. Like, I am just a pretty depressed individual, and it took a while to put a finger on. It's because this is what God made you to do, you know?
Did you have an aha moment?
Yeah, I did. So when we left the Foursquare plant and we were trying to find a church, and we ended up at CCV, there was about a year, a year space of time there where I didn't play, and I didn't even pick up my guitar. And part of that was because I had broken my wrist. But skateboarding, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I broke it in this bowl up in Anthem. And so I didn't play for like a year, and I got really depressed, like severely depressed. It was bad. And I didn't know what was wrong, right? And I was really having a hard time figuring it out. And through the help, like, with my wife and some friends, and then eventually getting involved back with music, starting at CCV, and then, you know, migrating to the place, like, it became very apparent to me, like, this is when you're happy. Like, it doesn't have to be full-time. I'm not a full-time worship leader. Like, I have a regular day job. I'm a claims adjuster at USAA. I just do this, you know, Sundays and then Thursday night rehearsals. But I get such a joy out of prepping for a service and putting together a set list and putting together, you know, like, song flow, and this is how it's going to dovetail with the sermon, and this is how we're going to do it together as a band, and then getting together on Thursday nights and hashing that all out, and then executing on Sunday morning. I know that sounds funny because it's a worship service, but, you know, you're basically trying to do the best that you can to lead people into the presence of the Lord. So that's why all that preparation happens, right? And I find such joy in it. Like, and it took me a while, but I realized it now. Just like, you know, whatever church I'm at, like, you're not going to get rid of me. Like, I don't care if I'm in the back, like, plinking on an old piano. Like, I'm going to be playing with the band on stage, because that's what God's made me to do.
Right, 100%. And when you're talking about song flow and the preparation for your worship, are you, when you get and it's time to perform on Sundays, do you leave an element up to improvisation, or let me see, when I do worship, one of my biggest hurdles that I have is to communicate with the audience, with the congregation. I guess I can do it with the music. You know, when I start playing, I almost use the guitar as a buffer between me and the congregation. Yeah. And when it comes time for me to speak, I almost rely on the lyrics to speak, and I'm silent in between the songs. And part of my growth and part of the direction that I'm heading is to speak in a way that gets people involved in that unity. And I don't know if you were referring about that in terms of your preparation, or because you were talking about your song flow and the flow of the music.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
the ministry.
Oh yeah, that's part of it.
How do you see that?
Yeah, that's definitely part of it. So not just like, hey, we're gonna do verse 1, chorus, verse 2, chorus, bridge, chorus, chorus, end, but how do we transition from one song to the next, right? If you got 2 songs in C, well, it's pretty easy, right? But what if you're doing a key change? Or what if you're going from a fast song to a slow song? How do you transition that, right? Also, my pastor, I personally, this is just me, and I'm sorry if this is like, if you're listening to this and this is you, like, no offense, but I personally don't like it when worship leaders get up there and like start preaching a sermon, like, no, that's the pastor's job. You're just supposed to get us ready for the sermon. But my pastor really likes it when I say something in between songs, maybe about the song we're about to sing, or tying some sort of spiritual nugget or revelation maybe I've had. And he lets me be very creative, which is super fun in that. And sometimes I have it kind of planned out. Like, we'll talk about it Thursday night. Okay, guys, we're going to talk about this. Or maybe one of my background singers will, hey, you've got something you're going to say here, perfect. Like, you're going to say this little thing or read this scripture. And sometimes it's just totally on the fly. Like, sometimes I'm like, literally, like, service is about to start, and I'm like, I still don't know what I'm going to say in between these 2 songs, but I know I need to say something. So, Lord, you're just going to have to speak through me. And, he always provides, whether it's something he gives us on Thursday night before, or it's, all right, Lord, I know you're going to have me say something. I'm just not sure what yet.
Right.
And then just letting him speak.
Yep. Yeah, you were talking about the music and how that is the thing for you. What do you think, why do you think music is that for you?
That's a good question. I think that music, if we're speaking about music in general, it's a gift from God, and it's he designed it, like he made it, right? And music is super powerful. So it can change your mood, it can enhance your mood, it can take you from having a good day to a bad day. It can take you from, I don't want to work out right now, to you put on like the Eye of the Tiger by Survivor. Yeah, right. And then I'm going to go work out. I'm going to go to my class or whatever, right? I'm going to go do CrossFit. And so it can totally change your mood. And so, like, that part of music has been with me since I was a little kid, like old enough to appreciate it, right? And then getting to be a part of that in the church setting where I feel it's the most impactful. Like, if you have any musical bent in you and you want to be part of something amazing at your church, like, get involved with worship. Because like, the way I see it, people are walking in the door and they've had really bad weeks. They've had, bad reports from the doctor. They've had a financial crisis. They've, had rough relationships with their family or their wife or their kids, like, all week long. And they walk in the doors and the music starts, and sometimes you're the first positive spiritual, God is with us, God is for you thing that they're hearing all week long. And you can totally allow the Lord to use you to change people's hearts and turn them towards him, and stop looking at the problems and start looking at the provider. And now then they're ready to hear the sermon.
You're giving me goosebumps.
I got it too.
Absolutely right. I want, if you guys are listening to this and you made it this far, that if you have a musical bent in you, or you got this desire for music, get involved.
Yeah. And
your church will accept you. And this is a perfect place to do something meaningful with this bent in you.
Yeah.
Man, that is so, so good.
Here we go. 2, 3, 4. Worthy of every song we could ever sing, worthy of all the praise we could ever bring. do I say thank you, Lord, for the way that you love and the way that you come, for all that you've done and all that you'll do. My heart pours out thank you. You don't have to come, but you always do. You show up in splendor. You change the whole room. You don't have to come, but you always do. You show up in splendor. You change the whole room. And how do I say thank you, Lord, for the life that you gave and the cross that you bore, for the love you poured out to ransom my soul. My heart pours out this thankful song. You don't have to come, but you always do. You show up in splendor. You change the whole room. You don't have to come, but you always do. You show up in splendor. You change the whole room. Yeah. You walk through all of my walls. You conquered my shame, stepped into my past, filled my world with grace. You didn't have to come, but you wanted to. You walked through all of my walls and conquered my shame, stepped into my past, filled my world with grace. You didn't have to come, but you wanted to. You don't have to come, but you always do. You show up in splendor.